Hello, my treasures. It's time for some more cards to be reviewed for the March of the Lich King set, including some that support a key mechanic to a class that has been neglected for most of its existence, which would be Outcast. So let's begin with the Demon Hunter cards. The first one being Fierce Outsider, which is a 1 cost to attack 1 HP minion with Rush Outcast. Your next Outcast card costs 1 less. This can be easily comboed with a bunch of other Outcast cards that exist currently in Standard, and being able to mana cheat is always really nice. This is a great turn 1 play instead of just using your hero power, as it does give you a 2/1 body. There needs to be some type of real big payoff for Outcast deck to actually work, but the legendary in the core set could in theory be that big payoff. It really just depends on how many Outcast cards you can get in a single turn. I really like the design of this card. And now for the next card revealed, which is Wretched Exile, which is a 2 cost to attack 3 HP minion. After you play a Outcast card, add a random Outcast card to your hand. So the first thing with this card is the fact that whatever card that you are going to randomly generate will also be able to instantly be outcasted itself, which is pretty good if you have enough mana to actually do it. Still looking for a really big payoff for Outcast, but as it currently stands, I think the one in the core set might be enough to maybe make something like this work. We will see though. And finally, the last Demon Hunter card revealed today is Felerin the Forgotten, which is a 4 cost 3 attack 3 HP minion with the battle cry. Add a random Outcast card to the left and right sides of your hand. They cost 2 less. I love this card. I love the mechanic of Outcast. It's such a cool mechanic to actually play around, and I really have been wanting to revisit a Outcast Demon Hunter deck. I'm really hoping that we might see maybe additional card for this type of synergy in some of the later cards within the set. But honestly, this is a pretty good start. Right now, outside of the cards within the set, there are only 7 cards that have Outcast within Standard, which means the pool of actually generating some additional card draw or additional removal tools off of something like this is incredibly high. There's only a few cards that will be completely dead off of a random generation of this or the previous card, which makes this incredibly good and probably incredibly consistent. Honestly, I really do like how this is shaping up. And besides Overload, I think Outcast is the least represented class mechanic out of all the classes in Hearthstone right now, which because there's never really been a Outcast Demon Hunter deck that was fully functional. But I really do hope between these cards and the core legendary, then maybe we can actually see one of those decks be meta relevant, because this is one of my favorite mechanics when it comes to Hearthstone, because it promotes a unique playstyle within the game. I almost forgot a card, which is Vengeful Walloper, which is a 7 cost demon or Demon Hunter with 5 attack, 5 HP. Rush costs 1 less for each Outcast card you've played this game. Not the biggest payoff that I would have wanted for a Outcast deck. However, this could be discounted incredibly easily, because a lot of the Outcast cards currently in Standard are incredibly cheap, and there is a lot of mana cheat within those cards and some of the other synergy. I do think this is probably pretty decent enough for it to actually see some play. If we do see some way to actually duplicate a card like this, because it does have a demon tag, this will be a lot more playable, and maybe we'll see a return of a giant Demon Hunter deck. Alright, now time for the warrior cards. The first one being a Last Stand, which is a 4 cost spell that draws a taunt minion and doubles its stats. Card draw to draw into your key cards is always really nice. However, the fact that this costs 4 instead of something a little bit lower makes me really wonder what type of other taunt minions that we're going to see within this set, because the other warrior cards revealed so far haven't really had any really good taunt synergy. Sure, you do have the 6 cost, but I don't really think you would want to double the stats on that. And there aren't really any ways to get a lot of advantage off of a card like this currently in Standard. Bulk Up, in theory, could be a nice combo piece with this card in order to get a really big taunt out on like turn 4. But outside of cases like that, I don't know how useful this is actually going to be until we see some additional taunt cards. I'm assuming the other legendary that we will see for Warrior is probably going to have something to do with Taunt synergy itself, because the one that we got revealed today doesn't, and it's kind of weird given what his name actually is. Now for the next card, which is Disruptive Spellbreaker, which is a 5 cost, 4 attack, 5 HP warrior minion that at the end of your turn, your opponent discards a spell. So we finally have some type of hate on spell cards for disruption, which is interesting. I know a few other ones exist, but this is the first one that directly interacts with spells in your opponent hand that I can think of off the top of my head, or at least that is currently in standard. This card could be incredibly powerful in a control style of warrior deck. And you could even use this in a Vander deck because it does cost 5, lowering its cost to 3 instead of 5, which might be interesting to try out. And given the fact that we did see some minion disruption for warrior within the Maw and Disorder mini set, I do think a card in combination with some of those cards might actually see a lot of play if we do have a hand control style of warrior deck come into fruition. There is enough neutral cards or even just cards that warrior has access to maybe make that deck into a fully functional deck, though this does rely on there to be a really heavy spell based meta. It also does give warrior the unique position of actually being able to interact with your opponent's spells on your turn, which is something that could be incredibly useful if you force them to discard a key spell out of their hand. Right, for the final card of reveal today, Asvedon, the Grandshield. I butchered that name, I know it. Just going to move on. He is a 3 cost, 3 HP, 3 attack minion. With the battle cry, cast a copy of the last spell your opponent played. Really interesting that this doesn't have a taunt, but I'm assuming it doesn't have a taunt because of a card like Bulk Up where you could get additional copies of it. I do like how this card is positioned to help out warrior interact with your opponent key spells. And while this won't win you a game against something like Quest Priest, in most cases this will give you some type of real big advantage. You could use it as a way to AoE clear your opponent's board, buff up your own board if they AoE buff, or even just draw a bunch of cards through some of the additional draw power cards within other classes. Sure, some of those cards might have conditions that you can't normally easily fulfill in Warrior, which makes this card a little bit worse. However, the other downside that could happen is it's a targeting spell that doesn't always target an enemy, which means a card like this is going to be a lot worse than you would normally expect outside of a case where you're trying to AoE clear using one of your own opponent's spells, or even just buffing up your own board. I think this is probably an alright card. I don't think it is incredibly playable, but it does cost 3 mana, so it is a lot more flexible than something that would cost, let's say, 7 or higher. Generally, I don't actually know where a card like this actually fits. Maybe in an aggro deck where you're trying to copy a key buff, or maybe just get rid of your opponent's board. I don't know. Alright, those were all the cards that were revealed today. Let me know down below which cards you're most looking forward to using. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.